Today I'm going to show you 3 exercises for plantar fasciitis that are better than towel scrunches. Now, if you don't know what towel scrunches are, they're a very common exercise in physical therapy where you take a towel like this and you scrunch your toes on the towel. Now, this exercise isn't bad. There's no such thing as a bad exercise, but it's not really specific to running. There's a time and place for this exercise if you just got out of a boot or if you broke your foot and you just haven't moved your foot in a long period of time. There's nothing wrong with doing this exercise just to move the toes and get the foot moving. But if you have an overuse injury such as plantar fasciitis, you want to do more exercises that are specific to running and that teach the big toe to push down into the ground instead of curling back, because we don't do that when we're running, so we shouldn't do it outside of running when we're practicing and rehabbing. Today I'm going to be showing you 3 exercises that you can do to help reduce your pain with plantar fasciitis. But if you want a full plan of what you need to do to get out of pain, I recommend you go through a free PDF guide that I have linked below. It's going to explain why you have plantar fasciitis and other things that you can do to reduce your pain, because I know plantar fasciitis can be awful, it can be debilitating, and it can be really tricky to treat. As I mentioned before, we want to teach the big toe to push down into the ground, not curling our toes back. Because when we're running and we're stabilizing in single leg stance, we're about to push off the ground, we're not curling our toes back to push off the ground. That wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't be efficient. We want to focus on pushing our big toe down into the ground during stance phase, and that's going to trigger big toe stability, arch stability, even more glute max activation, because now your femur is going into some internal rotation. So it's really important that we get that movement pattern down of pushing down into the ground. In terms of having plantar fasciitis and big toe stability, there's a huge link between big toe weakness and plantar fasciitis, because that big toe, when it stabilizes, it triggers arch stability. And if we don't have that, a lot more load is going to go through our heel where the plantar fascia inserts on the calcaneus. So the first exercise that we're going to do is toe yoga, where you're lifting just your big toe up, putting it down, and then your other 4 toes up. So I'm going to show you a couple different variations of this. The first one is going to be in a seated position. You can do this sitting on the couch. You can do it at work. It's almost like a more the merrier type of exercise, I like to say, because the more you can do it, the faster you are going to understand and learn motor control of the big toe, which is like the foundation of our neuromuscular system when it comes to activating that big toe. So you can do it in a seated position to start. So you're just going to lift big toe up, keep the other 4 toes down, and then bring the big toe down and just lift the other 4 toes up. Now this can be tricky. This is like, I always say, this is harder than any sort of heavy lifting exercise because it takes so much focus just to isolate working the big toe and then putting it down and then lifting the other 4 toes. Now, if you're like, Lisa, I cannot do this. I totally get it. That's why I said keep practicing it. But if you need some help, you can always use your hand or a foam roller, and you're just going to keep your other 4 toes down and then switch and then keep your big toe down. So you're using your hand as some pressure. You can also put a foam roller on your big toe or your other 4 toes just for some pressure, but eventually it will click and you will get it, but keep practicing it. So once you've progressed from sitting position, you've got it down, you've got the movement down, now you're going to go into a standing position. So I like to do both at the same time because why not? So you're just going to lift both toes, big toes up and down, and then the other 4 toes up and down. As you do this, a common compensation I see all the time, because we want to do this with really good form, is that the foot will tend to lean in as you lift the 4 toes up. Now we don't want this. We want the foot to stay in a straight position, very neutral position, and it's just to isolate. So if you're struggling with that, you can always put an object on the inside of your heel like this, just to make sure that you're not moving the object and you're just keeping your foot in that neutral position as you lift the other 4 toes up. So you've progressed from double leg and standing. Now you're going to go into single leg. So as you go into single leg, you can hold on to a wall if you need to. You're just going to lift up and down and keep alternating. Then as you strength train, you progress with your plantar fasciitis rehab, I want you to think about pushing that big toe down into the ground during your standing exercises. So first exercise worked on big toe isolation and stability. Now we're gonna work a little bit more on that big toe stability because it is so important, and some calf strength. A lot of the time, those with plantar fasciitis will say, my calf feels really tight. Maybe you stretch your calf all the time and it still feels tight. Could be because it's weak. So let's strengthen it and work on that big toe stability. So instead of just doing single leg heel raises, we're gonna do single leg heel raises with a little bit of a twist. So I want you to grab a wall, and then I'm gonna strengthen my right side. So wall's on the left side. I'm gonna lean into the wall. So my body is at a diagonal. I'm not hinging at the hips as my hip pops. I'm not hinging at the hips like this. I'm keeping my body in one straight line. Okay, and my foot's probably like 2 feet from the wall. Now from this position, I'm going to lift up in a single leg heel raise and down. Because I'm leaning more towards the inside, it's forcing me to stabilize with my big toe. It's forcing me to work on that arch stability and even that posterior tibialis strength that we really need for push off. So as you do this, lean into the wall and back. As you progress, you can start to step further and further away from the wall if you want. And you're really just focusing as you lift your heel up. You're going through that full range of motion with control. Key here is with control, slow and controlled. We're not rushing through it. And you're pushing that big toe down into the ground as your heel comes up. So we'll do about 2 sets of 10 of this exercise. In terms of toe yoga, we'll do about 30 to 40 reps with toe yoga. So we worked on big toe stability, we worked on calf strength. Now we're gonna work on arch stability. Arch stability is really important because like I said, if you don't have that strength and stability in your foot, it's just gonna keep going through that one spot, which in this case, because you have plantar fasciitis, is where that plantar fascia meets your calcaneus right here. So it's usually like the pain is right here. It's very localized. Sometimes it goes into the arch, but believe it or not, you have a ton of muscles that sit under the plantar fascia. These are called your intrinsic foot muscles. You can think of them as your foot core. They're very good at stabilizing the foot and the arch, and they're usually weaker when someone has plantar fasciitis. So what you're gonna do with this exercise is you're gonna make an arch with your foot and then relax it down. This is a really small movement, so don't expect to curl your foot and really make an arch and put the weight on the outside of your foot. It's not what we want here. It's a small movement, it's slow, it's controlled. So you make an arch and then you relax. You can see I have a really flat foot. So me making an arch is not a huge movement, but that's my norm. I'm not gonna force it into anything because I know I have a flat foot. I'm not starting with a high arch, trying to make a higher arch here. So we're making an arch and we're relaxing. So once you've got that down, let's address the big toe. Because like I said at the very beginning, you don't want to think about curling your toes. That's not functional for anything. We don't have claws here. So I want you to think about pushing your big toe down into the ground and then pulling it back towards your heel as you make this arch or you go into the short foot exercise. If you're just curling your toes, you know, this isn't teaching much. This isn't reinforcing any good movement pattern that we're gonna use when we're running. So think about pushing your toes down, pull them back towards your heel, and then you can start to feel those muscles work as you make an arch and then you relax. So we'll do about 30 reps of those. If you have plantar fasciitis, you want to address the whole picture. You don't want to just address rolling the arch, stretching the calf, and chasing those symptoms. It's almost like you're putting a Band-Aid on the pain, and we want to get rid of the pain, not just reduce the pain. So make sure you go through the free PDF guide I have linked below. It's absolutely free, and I'll give you more tips on how you can reduce your pain and get rid of your pain so you can return to pain-free running once you go through that PDF.